He treated the Apache girl as temporary, until the ranch felt empty without her. The grass stretched out like a soft green ocean, broken only by the fences, barns, and small clusters of trees. The air was fresh and smelled faintly of hay, soil, and horses, a scent that was entirely new to her. Her heart beat fast with a mix of excitement and nervousness. This was not her home, but she had been sent here to help her family, to learn, and perhaps to find a place in the world beyond the familiar hills of her Apache village. Maya carried a small bundle of belongings on her back. Inside were a few changes of clothes, some simple tools, and a notebook she cherished, where she had written down little observations, stories, and sketches of animals she had met over the years. Though she had grown up helping her family with daily chores, she had never worked on a ranch like this. The scale of it was overwhelming, the wide pastures, the large barns, and the number of horses and cattle that seemed endless. But there was something in her that thrived on new challenges. She had always been curious, always willing to try, even when things seemed impossible. At the edge of the yard, a man was inspecting the horses. His name was Daniel. He was tall and strong, with broad shoulders and a weathered face that spoke of years under the sun. His hair was dark, but streaks of gray hinted at the experience that came with age. When he noticed Maya, his gaze was brief but measured. He had seen many workers come and go over the years, people who stayed for a season and then vanished. From the look of her, he assumed she would be no different, a temporary helper who would soon return to her own life. That thought made him keep his distance, polite but cool, as he nodded slightly in acknowledgement. Maya, however, did not feel intimidated. She had grown up learning respect but not fear. She approached Daniel with careful steps and a small, confident smile. "Good morning," she said softly. Her voice was calm and steady, yet carried a warmth that made even the sternest person pause for a moment. Daniel replied with a short nod. "Morning. You must be Maya. I hear you'll be helping us for a little while." His words were neutral, almost formal, but there was an underlying curiosity, a silent question about what she could do. Maya's eyes swept over the ranch, taking in the horses tied to posts, the cattle grazing in the distance, and the barns filled with tools and hay. Everything was new and fascinating. She could feel her heart quicken at the thought of learning every corner of this place, understanding the routines and proving herself capable. "Yes," she replied. "I'll do my best to help." Her words were simple, but the determination behind them made Daniel raise an eyebrow slightly. There was something about her that felt different from the others he had seen. The first few hours were a whirlwind for Maya. Daniel gave her a tour of the ranch, pointing out the stables, the feeding areas, and the storage barns. He showed her where the tools were kept, how to clean the stalls, and how to handle the smaller animals. Maya listened intently, memorizing every detail. She asked questions when she needed clarification, but never in a way that seemed bothersome. The ranch hands, a mix of young and older men, watched her quietly. Some were amused by the new girl's eagerness, while others were silently impressed. She had a calmness and focus that made even the busiest tasks seem easier. By mid-morning, Maya was assigned to help with the horses. She approached a young mare that had been skittish around strangers. Most of the workers gave her wide space, thinking it was too difficult for someone new. Maya, however, crouched down and spoke in a soft voice, letting the mare sniff her hand. Slowly, the horse's tense muscles relaxed, and it allowed her to gently stroke its mane. The ranch hands watched in surprise. They had seen many people struggle with these animals, but Maya moved with a quiet confidence, almost as if she could understand them without words. Daniel, who had been observing from a distance, frowned slightly. He was used to judging people by their first actions, expecting mistakes and clumsiness. But this girl seemed different, not in a way that threatened him, but in a way that caught his attention. He said nothing, but made a mental note. Temporary, he reminded himself. She would leave soon enough and the ranch would return to its normal rhythm. Yet, a small part of him could not help but wonder if she might surprise him further. As the day went on, Maya learned quickly. She helped feed the cattle, repaired a broken fence under the guidance of one of the ranch hands, and carried buckets of water to the horses. She listened carefully to the instructions, but when a problem arose, she often found a simple solution that others had overlooked. For instance, when a gate latch would not close properly, Maya suggested a small adjustment with a piece of rope. The ranch hands laughed at first, thinking it too simple to work, but it did. The gate held firm and the men gave her small nods of approval. By afternoon, the sun was high and the heat pressed down on the wide plains. Maya paused for a moment, wiping the sweat from her brow. She watched as Daniel oversaw the ranch, moving from task to task with efficiency and precision. There was a certain pride in his movements, a clear love for the land and the animals. Maya felt a quiet admiration for him. Though he seemed distant and strict, she sensed a man who worked hard because he cared deeply about everything around him. She wanted to learn from him, to prove herself worthy of his respect, even if he did not yet see it. During a brief lunch break, Maya sat under the shade of an old oak tree. She pulled out her notebook and sketched the outline of the ranch, the barns, and a mare she had grown fond of during the morning. Drawing helped her think and process everything she had experienced. She noticed Daniel watching from a distance but did not approach her. She was used to people keeping their distance at first. She had learned patience in her village. The sun warmed her back, and for a moment she allowed herself to imagine the possibility of belonging somewhere new, even if it was temporary. The afternoon brought more work, and as Maya continued to prove herself, the ranch began to feel slightly different. Tasks that had seemed tedious now felt lighter with her presence. Even the animals responded to her gentle touch and careful attention. Yet Daniel remained distant, maintaining the boundaries of authority. He treated her as a passing presence, a temporary helper who would soon return to her life elsewhere. But quietly, he began to notice how smoothly the day went with her help, how the ranch seemed more ordered, calmer, and perhaps even happier. By the time the sun began to dip toward the horizon, painting the sky with gold and pink, Maya had finished her first full day at the ranch. Her muscles ached pleasantly from the hard work, and her mind buzzed with everything she had learned. Daniel approached her as she tended to the horses one last time before dinner. "You did good today," he said simply. His words were brief, but there was a trace of acknowledgement that he did not often give. Maya smiled softly. "Thank you," she replied. She did not expect praise, only the chance to do her best. That evening, as Maya settled into the small room prepared for her, she felt a mixture of pride and anticipation. The ranch was a strange new world, full of challenges and lessons waiting to be discovered. She had arrived as a temporary helper, but already the land, the animals, and even the people were beginning to feel familiar. Somewhere deep inside, she sensed that this place, which had seemed vast and intimidating in the morning, could become a home if she worked hard and remained patient. And though Daniel still saw her as someone who would leave soon, the smallest hint of doubt had entered his mind. He could not deny the impact she had made in a single day. Maya had arrived quietly, but her presence was already making the ranch feel different. And neither of them fully understood yet how much this temporary visitor might change the rhythm of their lives. The next morning, the ranch seemed different to Maya. The sun rose softly over the wide pastures, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of dew-covered grass. She walked toward the stables, her boots crunching on the dirt path, feeling a mixture of nervousness and excitement. After her first day, she had learned that ranch life was hard, but it was also full of rewards. The horses, cattle, and even the land itself seemed to respond to care and attention. She had made small progress yesterday, but she knew there was still so much to understand. Daniel was already outside, checking the fences and watching the herd of horses graze. He noticed Maya approaching and gave a curt nod. His expression was calm, almost indifferent, yet Maya sensed the faint curiosity beneath it. She had learned to read people early in life, and she understood that his guarded demeanor was not cruelty, just caution. He treated everyone as temporary, as if no one could stay long enough to make a difference. Maya, however, was determined to change that perception, not by force, but by quiet effort and patience. The ranch hands were already busy with their morning chores. They greeted her with smiles and nods, some teasing gently about how fast she had adapted yesterday. Maya smiled back. She liked the camaraderie, the way people worked together despite the long hours and heavy tasks. She quickly joined a small group responsible for grooming the horses. Her hands were careful and confident as she brushed the animals' coats, noticing the small details. The way a horse's ears twitched when it was nervous, the gentle rhythm of their breathing, and the warmth of their skin under her touch. As she worked, she began to observe Daniel more closely. He moved efficiently, his every action deliberate. He had a way of managing the ranch that seemed effortless to an outsider, though she knew from experience that it required skill and patience. Maya admired him silently, not just for his ability, but for the care he showed for the animals. Even though he spoke little and smiled rarely, she could tell he had a deep respect for the land and those who worked on it. This made her want to prove herself even more. By mid-morning, Maya was sent to help with the younger horses that were not yet trained. These animals were skittish and easily frightened. Most workers handled them with cautious distance, often letting them wander until someone experienced could manage them. Maya, however, approached each horse slowly, speaking in soft tones. She mirrored their movements gently, letting them see her as calm and safe. Slowly, one by one, the horses allowed her to touch them, then follow her instructions. The ranch hands watched quietly, impressed that someone so new could earn the trust of animals that had challenged even seasoned workers. Daniel observed all this from a distance. He could not help but notice the difference her presence made. Yet he continued to remind himself she was only temporary, a visitor whose efforts, however useful, were not permanent. He was careful not to give her too much attention, keeping his words brief and practical. Still, a subtle change had begun. The ranch, which had seemed rigid and efficient yesterday, now felt a little lighter, smoother, more responsive. He felt a flicker of awareness that Maya was doing more than just completing tasks. She was influencing the entire rhythm of life on the ranch. Around noon, a challenge arose. A small calf had wandered away from the herd and was stuck near the edge of the pasture. Panic ran through the younger ranch hands, who were unsure how to retrieve it safely. Maya noticed immediately. Without hesitation, she ran toward the calf, speaking in a calm voice, making slow movements to avoid startling it. The ranch hands followed at a distance, unsure if it would work. Maya reached the calf, gently guiding it back toward the herd, whispering encouragement as it struggled. Slowly, carefully, she led it back to safety. When the calf was reunited with its mother, the ranch hands let out quiet cheers. Daniel watched, expression unreadable, but deep inside he felt a stir of surprise. She had handled the situation with calm, intelligence, and courage, all without needing instructions. The afternoon brought a new set of tasks. Maya was sent to help repair a broken fence along the north pasture. The wind had loosened several boards, and the fence had begun to sag. She worked alongside one of the older ranch hands, learning how to properly reinforce the wooden posts and fasten the boards. Her hands moved steadily, her mind attentive to every detail. She listened to the man's instructions, but she also suggested small adjustments that made the work easier and stronger. The older man raised his eyebrows but nodded in approval. Daniel, from his usual post of overseeing multiple tasks, noticed again. Maya was not just learning, she was contributing meaningfully. As the sun began to dip lower in the sky, painting the plains in golden hues, Daniel finally approached her. He had been observing her all day, quietly noting her skills and demeanor. "You've done well today," he said, his voice calm but carrying a hint of sincerity. Maya smiled, bowing her head politely. "Thank you, sir. I am learning every day." She had learned that patience and respect often mattered more than bold words or flashy skill. She wanted to earn his trust, not demand it. Later, Maya joined the other ranch hands in the kitchen for a simple meal of bread, soup, and fresh vegetables. Conversation flowed freely, and Maya listened as the men shared stories about past seasons, the challenges of working on a large ranch, and their favorite animals. She asked questions, shared a few of her own observations, and found herself welcomed into the small circle. Though Daniel did not join the meal, his presence was felt in every word the ranch hand spoke. His rules, his expectations, and his respect for diligence shaped their stories. Maya realized that life on the ranch was as much about understanding people as it was about tending animals. That evening, as Maya returned to her small room, she felt a mixture of fatigue and satisfaction. She thought about the animals she had worked with, the challenges she had faced, and the small victories of the day. She opened her notebook and wrote down her observations, the way the horses responded to calm voices, the way Daniel moved with efficiency and care, the subtle dynamics between the ranch hands. Writing helped her process the experiences and gave her a quiet joy. She felt that even in a place so new and unfamiliar, she was slowly finding a rhythm, a connection, and perhaps even a sense of belonging. Daniel, meanwhile, lingered on the porch of the main house, watching the sun disappear behind the hills. He thought about the new helper, the Apache girl who had arrived just a day before. He reminded himself she was temporary, that the ranch had seen countless workers come and go. Yet he could not shake a quiet acknowledgement of her skill, her calm presence, and the way she seemed to influence the rhythm of the ranch without even trying. He felt an unfamiliar sensation, an awareness that her absence, even for a moment, might leave a void. The night was calm and cool. Maya lay in bed, listening to the sounds of the ranch, the gentle lowing of cattle, the rustle of leaves in the wind, the distant whinny of a horse. She felt a sense of peace and anticipation, a feeling that she had arrived somewhere that could change her life. Though she had been sent here to help temporarily, she sensed the possibility of deeper connection, of learning more than just chores and routines. She wanted to continue proving herself, not just to Daniel or the ranch hands, but to herself. By the end of the second day, Maya's presence on the ranch was already noticeable. The animals responded to her care, the ranch hands appreciated her efforts, and even Daniel began to see that she was more than a temporary helper. Yet, the full impact of her presence had not yet revealed itself. The ranch felt a subtle shift, almost imperceptible, but enough to hint that life here was changing in ways that no one could fully predict. Maya understood that her journey had only just begun. She knew she would face challenges, difficult days, and moments when she might doubt herself. But she also knew that determination, patience, and respect could carry her through. As she closed her notebook and drifted to sleep, she dreamed of the wide pastures, the horses she had bonded with, and the possibility that this temporary assignment might turn into something far more meaningful. And as Daniel looked out over the ranch that night, he realized, though he would not admit it, that the Apache girl was beginning to leave a mark that could not be easily erased. A quiet, unassuming presence, but one that might soon be impossible to ignore. The following week brought a new rhythm to the ranch. Maya had settled into her routine, and though Daniel still treated her as temporary, he could not ignore how naturally she moved through the work. The horses, cattle, and even the ranch hands had begun to respond to her presence. Tasks that had seemed difficult to manage alone now ran more smoothly, and the ranch, which often felt tense and tiring, seemed lighter and more organized. Yet Daniel reminded himself constantly, she would leave eventually. This thought made him keep his distance, though quietly. He observed her closely, fascinated by the way she seemed to understand everything without needing long instructions. One morning, a sudden commotion broke the usual calm. A storm had rolled in unexpectedly from the west, bringing heavy rain, gusty winds, and the threat of flooding in the low pastures. The ranch hands rushed to secure the animals, reinforcing fences and moving cattle and horses to higher ground. Daniel barked instructions, moving quickly from one task to another. The storm was serious. If it was not handled properly, some of the animals could be lost, and valuable supplies might be damaged. The tension was thick, and every worker on the ranch felt the pressure. Maya did not panic. She moved with quiet precision, following Daniel's orders but also thinking ahead. She noticed that one of the young horses, the mare she had bonded with during her first day, was particularly frightened by the rain and wind. The horse kept backing toward a weak part of the fence, which could give way at any moment. Maya ran toward the mare, speaking softly, stroking its mane and whispering words of calm. The animal trembled but trusted her enough to follow her instructions, stepping carefully to a safer area. The ranch hands watched in amazement as she handled the situation without fear, without hesitation. Meanwhile, another problem arose. A calf had become stuck in the mud near a small creek, its legs sinking deeper with every attempt to move. The workers struggled to free it, calling for ropes and help from stronger men. Maya noticed the calf and the panic in its eyes. She quickly assessed the situation, guiding one of the ranch hands to tie a rope safely around the calf without hurting it. Then, using calm and deliberate movements, she instructed the men to pull slowly and steadily. After tense moments, the calf was free, shivering but unharmed. Daniel, who had been moving frantically between different crises, finally stopped and watched. Maya's quick thinking and courage had saved valuable animals at a critical moment. The storm raged for hours, but Maya continued to help wherever she was needed. She reinforced fences, moved hay to dry storage, and guided animals through the rain-soaked pastures. Her calm presence seemed to influence the others. Even when the wind threatened to knock over equipment, her steady instructions kept the ranch hands focused. Daniel, observing from the porch of the main house, could not deny the truth. Maya was doing more than just following orders. She was leading, protecting, and caring for the ranch as if it were her own. By mid-afternoon, the worst of the storm had passed, but the aftermath was just as demanding. Fallen branches blocked paths, fences were broken, and some animals were still unsettled from the chaos. Maya continued to move from task to task, helping wherever she was needed. She tended to a frightened foal, coaxing it back to its mother, and assisted an older ranch hand in mending a fence that had been torn apart by the wind. Every action she took was thoughtful and precise, showing not only skill but also deep empathy for the animals and people around her. Daniel finally approached her as she worked on tying a loose fence post. His face was still serious, but there was a faint trace of respect in his eyes. "You've done well today," he said, more meaningfully than ever before. "Better than most I've seen in a long time." Maya looked up, her face calm and composed. "Thank you, sir. I'm just trying to help." She did not boast or seek praise. She only wanted to do her best. Daniel, used to workers who sought approval or attention, felt something unfamiliar, a quiet admiration for someone who worked purely from purpose and care. The storm had left the ranch exhausted but intact. The animals were safe, the fences repaired, and the ranch hands tired yet grateful for Maya's guidance. Even Daniel, who had prided himself on handling crises efficiently, realized that Maya's presence had made the difference between minor damage and serious loss. He could no longer think of her as merely temporary. Her impact was undeniable, and he felt a new kind of awareness growing in him. She had become essential, even if he had not admitted it to anyone, or even to himself. That evening, the workers gathered for a simple meal. The conversation was lively, full of relief and stories about the day's events. Maya listened quietly, offering suggestions and insights when appropriate. The ranch hands looked at her differently now, with respect and appreciation. Daniel remained mostly silent, observing from a distance, but he could feel the shift. Everyone had begun to see Maya as more than a visitor. She was part of the ranch, part of their team. The quiet strength she had shown in the storm had made an impression that could not be ignored. After dinner, Daniel walked through the barns, checking on the animals one last time. He found Maya quietly tending to the horses, brushing and feeding them with care. She did not notice him at first, absorbed in her work. Daniel watched her, realizing that he had underestimated her all along. The girl he had thought of as temporary had shown courage, intelligence, and heart. She had saved animals, guided the workers, and brought calm in a situation where panic could have caused disaster. Maya looked up as he approached. "The horses seem calmer now," she said softly. Daniel nodded, words failing him for a moment. He had not often found himself unsure of what to say. "You did more than that," he admitted finally. "You kept the ranch from falling apart today." Maya smiled faintly, acknowledging the praise but without arrogance. "I just did what I could," she said simply. That night, as the wind howled softly outside, Daniel reflected on the events of the day. For the first time, he saw Maya not as a temporary helper, but as someone whose presence mattered deeply. He realized that the ranch had felt different before she arrived, and the difference was not just in the work completed, but in the sense of calm, order, and hope she had brought. He could feel a subtle change within himself, a shift in how he valued people and their contributions. Maya had proven that even someone new, someone from outside his world, could leave a lasting impact. Maya, meanwhile, lay in her small room, tired but fulfilled. She thought about the storm, the frightened animals, and the ranch hands who had worked alongside her. She knew that she had earned a place, not just in the daily work of the ranch, but in the hearts of those around her. She wrote in her notebook, sketching the events of the day and recording the lessons she had learned. She noted how patience, observation, and quiet determination could influence even the most chaotic situations. She felt proud of herself, not for recognition, but for the knowledge that she had made a real difference. The next morning, the ranch awoke to a clear sky and a sense of calm. The storm was over, and the animals were settling back into their normal routines. Daniel observed the ranch from his usual spot, thinking about how much had changed in just a short time. He still maintained his careful distance, still reminded himself that Maya was temporary, yet he felt an undeniable shift in his perception. She had proven herself in ways that words alone could not capture. She had become an integral part of the ranch's life, even if he had not yet said it aloud. Maya moved through her morning tasks with confidence. She fed the horses, checked the fences, and assisted the ranch hands, all while observing and learning. Her connection with the animals deepened, and the workers began to rely on her instinctive understanding. Daniel noticed how seamlessly she integrated herself into the rhythm of the ranch, how naturally she inspired trust and cooperation. He found himself thinking more than once that life on the ranch had already changed because of her. By evening, after a long but productive day, Maya stood near the barn, watching the sun set over the hills. The sky was a brilliant canvas of gold, pink, and orange. She felt a sense of peace and belonging that she had not expected to find so quickly. She had come as a temporary visitor, sent by her family to help, but the experiences of the past days had shown her that she could make a real difference. And somewhere deep inside, she sensed that she might be needed more than she had ever imagined. Daniel, walking past her, paused for a moment. He looked at Maya, brushing a horse's coat with gentle care, and felt a quiet realization. The ranch, which had always been his domain, had begun to feel different with her presence. Her influence, her calm determination, and her courage during the storm had shown him that life was richer when people were valued for their heart and skill, not just their presence. He still could not admit it fully, not even to himself, but the truth was clear. The ranch felt empty without her. The days after the storm were calmer, but the ranch still carried the memory of what had happened. Daniel noticed how smoothly things ran with Maya's help, and it unsettled him more than he expected. He had always relied on experience, discipline, and his own strength to manage the ranch. But Maya, a newcomer from outside his world, had quietly changed the way work was done. Her presence had brought order, calm, and subtle guidance, and though he would not admit it aloud, he began to notice a growing emptiness whenever she was not around for even a few minutes. One morning, Maya woke to find the ranch unusually quiet. Some of the ranch hands had been called to a neighboring farm for an urgent task, and she was left alone with the animals and Daniel, who was busy inspecting the fences. She moved through her chores methodically, feeding the horses, checking water troughs, and ensuring that the animals were calm. Though she was used to working alone sometimes, she sensed the subtle tension in the air. The routine felt incomplete without the usual bustle of workers, and she realized that even the land seemed quieter without the familiar presence of the ranch hands around her. Daniel, meanwhile, noticed the same feeling. The ranch, which was always busy and orderly, seemed to lack its usual energy. He found himself pausing between tasks, noticing how efficiently Maya moved, yet realizing that he had come to rely on her more than he expected. She was not just competent, she had become part of the rhythm of the ranch, the silent thread that held daily life together. For the first time, Daniel felt an unfamiliar awareness. The ranch felt incomplete without her. During the morning, a problem arose with one of the older barns. A section of the roof had weakened over time, and a heavy beam had started to sag dangerously. Daniel immediately went to assess the situation. Maya followed, offering to help. Daniel initially waved her off, believing it was too dangerous for someone new. But Maya insisted, explaining calmly how she could secure the beam temporarily until proper repairs could be made. Daniel, with some hesitation, allowed her to assist. Together they worked with ropes and wooden supports, securing the beam safely. Watching her work, Daniel felt a strange mix of admiration and frustration. He had treated her as temporary, but here she was, showing courage, intelligence, and skill that he had not expected. Her hands moved with precision, her mind attentive to every detail. She worked quietly without complaint, focusing on solutions rather than problems. By the time the beam was secure, Daniel realized something important. Her presence was no longer just helpful, it was vital. The rest of the day continued with similar tasks. Maya moved from one area of the ranch to another, assisting where needed, guiding the animals, and offering small, practical solutions that others had overlooked. Daniel began to notice how the ranch functioned differently when she was present. Tasks that had previously required multiple people now ran more smoothly under her care. The animals were calmer, the workers more focused, and even Daniel himself found a sense of order he had not realized was missing before she arrived. By afternoon, a group of ranch hands returned from their neighboring assignment. They were tired and dusty, but their faces brightened when they saw Maya. The energy of the ranch shifted immediately. She greeted them with a warm smile, assigning tasks efficiently and helping them catch up on the work that had been done in their absence. Daniel watched quietly, recognizing that she was the center of the day's organization. He realized reluctantly that her contributions went far beyond her assigned duties. During a brief lunch break, Maya sat under the shade of an old tree, her notebook open on her lap. She sketched the layout of the ranch, noting improvements she could suggest in the coming days. She observed Daniel from a distance, noticing the way he moved, the subtle ways he interacted with the ranch hands, and the pride he felt in the land he managed. She did not judge him. Instead, she admired his dedication and strength. At the same time, she realized that she had begun to influence the ranch in ways she had not anticipated. Her presence, once seen as temporary, had become central to the daily life of the place. In the late afternoon, Daniel approached her again. His tone was softer than usual, less formal, and edged with a hint of hesitation. "Maya," he said, "the ranch, it doesn't run the same without you." Maya looked up, surprised by the honesty in his voice. She had expected praise for her work, perhaps, but not an acknowledgement of her importance in such direct terms. "I try to do my best," she replied softly, her eyes meeting his with quiet sincerity. Daniel nodded, a rare smile touching his lips. He had never openly admitted that someone's presence mattered so deeply, but the words hung between them, undeniable. That evening, as the sun dipped below the hills and painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, Maya continued her rounds. She checked on the animals, ensured that fences were secure, and guided the younger ranch hands in tasks they had not yet mastered. Daniel walked beside her silently for a while, observing the care she showed in every action. He noticed how the animals responded to her calm presence, how the ranch hands deferred to her subtly, and how her quiet confidence brought a sense of stability that had been missing. As night fell, Daniel returned to the main house, reflecting on the day. He had long prided himself on managing the ranch with skill and efficiency, but he realized that Maya had brought something new, an unspoken understanding of the land, the animals, and the people. She had transformed the ranch not by authority, but by care, intelligence, and quiet determination. And the truth could no longer be ignored. Her absence, even briefly, left a noticeable void. Maya, meanwhile, sat in her small room, writing in her notebook. She recorded the day's events, noting the improvements, challenges, and lessons learned. She wrote about the animals, the workers, and even Daniel, reflecting on how patience, empathy, and quiet observation could influence the course of a day. Though she had arrived as a temporary visitor, she felt a deep sense of connection to the ranch. She realized that she was becoming part of something larger than herself, and that her presence mattered in ways she had not anticipated. The next morning, Daniel called Maya to help plan the day's work. For the first time, he included her in decisions beyond simple chores. Together, they assessed the pastures, identified areas needing attention, and organized the tasks for the ranch hands. Daniel found himself valuing her input more than he expected. Her suggestions were practical, insightful, and grounded in careful observation. He began to understand that her perspective was unique, something he could not replicate, no matter how experienced he was. Throughout the day, Maya continued to guide, assist, and care for the ranch. Daniel observed quietly, noticing the subtle ways in which she influenced the work, the animals, and the people. He realized that she had become indispensable not through authority or demand, but through competence, dedication, and empathy. Her impact was profound, and it touched every part of the ranch. By evening, Daniel could no longer deny it. The ranch felt incomplete without Maya. Her presence had become integral, shaping not only the efficiency of the work, but also the morale of the workers and the calmness of the animals. He had treated her as temporary, but the truth was clear. She had become vital, and the thought of the ranch without her was almost unbearable. Maya, aware of the quiet shift in Daniel's attitude, continued to work with humility and dedication. She did not demand recognition, but she understood that she was valued. The ranch had become more than a place of work. It had become a place of connection, learning, and belonging. And in that, Maya found a quiet satisfaction that went beyond accomplishment. That night, as the ranch settled into calm under the stars, Daniel stood on the porch, looking out at the fields. He reflected on the changes that had occurred since Maya's arrival, the way the ranch moved more smoothly, the way the animals responded, the way the workers seemed calmer and more focused. And most importantly, he realized that she had become part of the ranch in a way he could not ignore. The thought of losing her, even temporarily, left a hollow feeling he could not shake. Maya, lying in her small room, felt a similar awareness. She had arrived thinking of this as temporary, a short assignment, but the days had revealed something deeper. She had become part of the ranch, and her contributions mattered more than she could have imagined. She understood that her presence had begun to shape the lives of those around her, including Daniel. And though she had no desire to dominate or control, she felt a quiet pride in knowing that she was making a difference. The next morning, as the sun rose over the hills, Maya prepared for another day. The ranch was alive with activity, but the awareness of her own importance lingered gently in her mind. Daniel watched her from a distance, feeling the truth of her impact more clearly than ever. He had treated her as temporary, but the ranch and his own heart had already begun to depend on her. She was no longer a visitor, she had become essential. And for the first time, Daniel admitted to himself that he could not imagine the ranch functioning as it should without her presence. The days moved forward on the ranch with a rhythm that felt natural and steady. Maya had fully settled into the life she had once thought would be temporary. Each morning, she rose early to greet the animals and check the fences before the ranch hands arrived. Her hands moved with quiet precision as she fed the horses, tended the cattle, and prepared the barns for the day. The work was hard, as always, but she no longer felt the nervousness of a newcomer. Instead, she felt a sense of belonging that she had not expected when she first stepped onto the ranch. Daniel observed her closely that morning. He had long since realized that Maya's presence had become indispensable, but seeing her move through the tasks with calm confidence now struck him in a new way. It was not just her efficiency that mattered. It was the spirit she brought to the ranch. The animals seemed calmer, the ranch hands more focused, and even Daniel himself felt the day flow more smoothly when she was around. A part of him, one he rarely acknowledged to anyone, felt relief that someone so capable and thoughtful was here to share the weight of responsibility. That morning, a small but pressing problem arose. A section of fence along the east pasture had been weakened by wind during the previous week, and a few calves had wandered dangerously close to the road. Daniel began to organize the ranch hands to fix it, but Maya stepped forward, calmly pointing out the safest way to lead the calves back while reinforcing the fence at the same time. Daniel nodded silently, allowing her to take charge. Her directions were clear, precise, and gentle, and the workers followed them without hesitation. Within the hour, the calves were safe, the fence secure, and the pasture orderly once again. Daniel could not help but feel a quiet admiration. He had always prided himself on his ability to manage crises, but Maya had a way of seeing both the immediate problem and the subtle details that could make the difference between success and failure. She had become more than just a helper. She was a guide, a leader in her own quiet way. And for the first time, Daniel admitted to himself fully that the ranch would not feel complete without her. By mid-morning, the ranch hands began their usual tasks under Maya's guidance. She moved among them, offering advice, assisting with difficult tasks, and ensuring that the animals were cared for properly. The ranch buzzed with quiet energy, and Daniel walked among the workers, observing rather than directing. He noticed how naturally they responded to Maya, how they seemed more confident and coordinated. He realized that her influence extended far beyond her direct work. She had become the center of the ranch's daily life, the thread that connected every part of it. As the day progressed, Daniel found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought Maya to the ranch. He remembered the first day, when he had seen her as temporary, someone who would arrive, work for a short time and leave. He had kept his distance, believing that attachment was unnecessary. But over time, he had watched her prove herself in ways he could not have predicted, from calming frightened animals to guiding the ranch hands during storms, to quietly organizing tasks with intelligence and patience. Each day had chipped away at his belief that she was just passing through, until finally he had no choice but to accept the truth. She was part of the ranch, and life without her would feel empty. That afternoon, a small celebration was held. The ranch hands had finished a difficult project, and Daniel allowed a moment of rest and conversation. Maya sat among them, her smile quiet but genuine, listening to stories, offering helpful suggestions and sharing laughter. Daniel observed from a distance, feeling a warmth he rarely allowed himself. He realized that Maya had not only contributed to the work of the ranch, but had also brought a sense of community and connection that had been missing. Her presence had transformed the ranch in subtle but meaningful ways. Later in the evening, as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Daniel walked over to Maya. She was tending to the horses, brushing their coats with gentle care. He stood quietly for a moment, watching her work, and then spoke. "Maya," he said, his voice softer than usual, "I want you to know, the ranch wouldn't feel the same without you. You've become a part of it, a part that I can't imagine being without." Maya looked up, surprised but pleased by the sincerity in his tone. She had never sought recognition, but these words carried weight. They were more than praise, they were acknowledgement of her place, her value, and the difference she had made. She smiled softly and replied, "I'm glad to be here. I care about this ranch, the animals, and everyone who works here. It feels like home." Daniel nodded, a rare, genuine smile touching his face. For the first time, he fully admitted to himself that Maya was no longer temporary. She had become integral, not just to the ranch's operations, but to its heart. Her presence had brought calm, order, and warmth, and he recognized that he had grown to rely on her in ways he had never expected. The next few days were filled with the usual rhythm of ranch life, but now, the sense of belonging was unmistakable. Maya moved among the animals, the ranch hands, and Daniel with quiet confidence. The ranch functioned smoothly, but it was not just efficiency that had changed. It was the atmosphere, the way everyone felt calmer, more coordinated, and more connected. Daniel found himself seeking her counsel on small matters he had once handled alone. He realized that her perspective was invaluable, not because it contradicted his own, but because it complemented it, bringing insight, patience, and understanding that he could not provide alone. One morning, Daniel noticed that a horse he had trained personally was anxious and restless. The animal had always responded to his commands, but now it seemed unsettled. He tried to calm it, but it was Maya who stepped forward, moving slowly, speaking softly, and offering gentle reassurance. The horse relaxed almost immediately, leaning into her hands as if instinctively trusting her. Daniel watched in quiet amazement. He realized that her connection with the animals, and with the ranch itself, was deeper than he had understood. As the week went on, Daniel's acknowledgement of Maya's importance became more open. He asked her advice on planning pastures, caring for new foals, and organizing work tasks. He listened attentively, sometimes surprised by her simple but effective solutions. The ranch hands, too, had come to rely on her guidance. The dynamics of the ranch had shifted naturally, and everyone had grown accustomed to the steady presence of the girl who had arrived as temporary. One evening, after the work was done, Daniel and Maya sat quietly on the porch of the main house, watching the sun sink behind the distant hills. Daniel spoke softly, almost as if he were confessing something he had kept inside for a long time. "Maya," he said, "when you first came here, I thought of you as temporary. I didn't expect you to matter as much as you do now, but I see it clearly. The ranch feels complete with you here. Without you, I don't think it would feel the same." Maya smiled, her eyes reflecting the warm glow of the sunset. "I never expected to stay long," she admitted, "but I've come to care about this ranch and everyone in it. I feel like I belong here." Her words were quiet, sincere, and carried a weight that touched Daniel deeply. He realized that she had not just changed the ranch, she had changed him, opening his heart in ways he had never anticipated. From that day forward, Maya's role on the ranch was no longer seen as temporary. She was a full part of the community, respected by the ranch hands, trusted by Daniel, and loved by the animals she cared for so diligently. Her influence was subtle but profound, shaping the ranch's operations, its spirit, and the lives of everyone around her. The quiet confidence and dedication that had once been underestimated had become the foundation of the ranch's success and harmony. As the seasons changed, Maya continued to grow in her knowledge and skill. She learned more about breeding, animal care, and the delicate balance of land management. She also built strong relationships with the ranch hands, sharing stories, laughter, and lessons from her own experiences. Daniel, once distant and reserved, now engaged with her openly, valuing her opinions and trusting her judgment. The ranch, which had once felt like a place of work alone, had become a home, a place of connection, respect, and belonging. One late afternoon, as Maya tended to the horses, Daniel approached her with a soft smile. "You've made a difference here," he said simply, "not just in the work but in everything. This ranch, it wouldn't feel the same without you." Maya looked at him, feeling the depth of the words. She had come as a temporary visitor, but now she was an inseparable part of the ranch, a presence that could not be replaced. Maya replied quietly, "I never wanted to just be helpful, I wanted to belong. And now I do." Daniel nodded, understanding fully. The years he had spent managing the ranch, the challenges he had faced, and the pride he had taken in his work were all enriched by Maya's presence. She had brought care, courage, and understanding, and in doing so had become the heart of the ranch. As the sun set, casting a golden glow across the fields, Daniel and Maya stood together, watching the animals settle for the night. The ranch was calm, orderly, and alive with quiet energy. The workers had returned home for the evening, but the rhythm of life here felt complete. Maya had arrived as a temporary helper, but she had stayed through her dedication, her courage, and her quiet strength. She had become an essential part of the ranch, and in the process had brought connection, warmth, and belonging to everyone, including Daniel. For the first time, Daniel admitted fully to himself and to the world he had built that Maya was no longer temporary. She was part of the ranch, part of its heartbeat, and part of his life in ways he could not imagine losing. And for Maya, the ranch had become a home she had never expected, a place where her skills, her heart, and her presence were valued and appreciated. Together they had found balance, harmony, and a quiet joy that only came from understanding, respect, and belonging. The ranch felt whole. The animals were calm, the workers were confident, and Daniel, once reserved and cautious, now understood the importance of seeing the value in others. Maya had arrived as a visitor, but she had stayed in hearts, minds, and lives. And for everyone, the lesson was clear. Sometimes, the presence we think is temporary becomes the most important part of all.